All right, it looks like we have hit the top of the hour, so I'm gonna turn on my little video here so you don't just hear a disembodied voice. You can actually see ahead to go along with it. Welcome everyone to today's webinar. Seems like this is a big topic right now. We have our largest audience in FlexJobs history today. So lots of people on the call, and I'm grateful to be able to share this type of information at this time with all of us experiencing the same thing, regardless of where we are right now. It's an interesting and unusual time in history, and I'm glad we're all here together today. Let's see, I just want to make sure I have everything up and running. It looks like you can hear me, you can see me, that's great. So a couple things to mention, some housekeeping notes. This is going to be recorded, so if you can't make it through the whole seminar, or if you want to share this with somebody later, you will get a link to view the recording. We're going to try to send that out over the weekend. Zoom right now, which the platform that we're on is called Zoom, and it is very popular at the moment with lots of people using it. So the webinar recordings take longer for them to process. So it's probably going to be a few days before we get this recording link back to you, but we will have a recording to send you, and you will be able to view that, be able to share the link with other people. There will also be a link to any of the resources that I discussed today. So we have different guides and articles and things that go along with the information that I'll share you. So all of that will be included in that email with the link to view the webinar. So yes, you will have that. If you have a question today, you can ask it in the Q&A section of Zoom. So there's a little Q&A area. You can put your question there. You can also vote for other questions that you have. So if you see somebody else has already entered a question that you have yourself, you can hit the thumbs up button, and that will help vote up the question into the top of the queue. I see some people have already discovered that, so that is great. Also, thank you for not being annoyed by my busy background. I am working from the attic of my house today, which is one of the few rooms that still has the old wallpaper. We're all just making do at this point. And I'm happy and grateful to be able to have a space, a dedicated space to work from. So let's see, any other things? Oh, you can also, as some of you have found, you can use the chat in Zoom. The chat will be really helpful. And let me just tilt this down a little bit. I tend to talk with my hands a lot, so now at least you'll be able to see what I'm doing. The chat area is really helpful to share your own tips, because some of you may not be new to remote work. This may be something that you've done for a while. You're just looking for your next remote job. For some of you, you're testing it out right now for the first time, so that's great. But any tips and tricks you have in terms of job searching, working remotely, those sorts of things, I would love for us to just share anything and everything we feel is worth sharing with each other. I think that will make this a lot more valuable, just because we're kind of all in this together at this point. So let's dive in. There's a lot of information to cover. Now, I know because this is such a large audience, we have a lot of people here who might not otherwise be familiar with FlexJobs. It's the company that I work for. I'm the Career Development Manager at FlexJobs. We are a job search website. We've been around since 2007, specializing in remote and flexible work. And I run the career coaching program at FlexJobs, where we have a team of coaches who help people with individual coaching sessions, resume reviews, that sort of thing. So FlexJobs, there's a lot of resources on our site that are free and open to the public. And then we are a membership site when it comes to the jobs on our site, because our whole purpose is to screen and verify every single job before it gets posted, so that when people are using FlexJobs, they find a very clean database with professional level remote and flexible jobs. But like I said, there are lots of free resources on the site. So I definitely invite you to use FlexJobs to its fullest. Even if you're not a member, there's a lot that you can do on the site, like free webinars like this. Let's see. A couple other things. No, that was it. I think just the housekeeping, a little bit about FlexJobs, and now we can dive in. I'm going to try to save as much time as I can at the end of the presentation to go through questions. Also, thank you for everyone who's doing the audio work to help other people with the audio. I love you right now. I am a one-person show at this point. That's just the nature of where we are at this moment. So thank you everyone for pitching in and helping everyone else with audio. That is much appreciated. And on the recording, you will be able to hear all of this part. Okay, so let's dive into the remote job market. So I just wanted to go over what this looks like I do have a few caveats to talk about, because when we first originally put out that we were going to do this webinar, it was, I think, 3 weeks ago, and things are very different now than they were, just in terms of what we're experiencing on a day-to-day basis. The overall job market has not changed that much, but I'm sure we will see changes. I'm not trying to be Pollyanna-ish about it. But at the moment, this is what we're looking at. So it's really right now too early to tell the impacts on the remote job market specifically. Anecdotally, there's definitely more people interested in working from home, as noticed by the huge uptick in the number of people on this type of webinar. So I think competition-wise, there is going to be more competition out there for people who are looking for jobs that let them work from home. Some employers have temporarily slowed or paused hiring activity. And that's while they get themselves situated to work more remotely. This is, sometimes employers have partially remote companies. So once everybody goes remote, it takes a bit of adjusting, or some companies have been brick and mortar companies forever, and they're just doing remote work for the first time. So employers right now, it runs the gamut between either, not hiring as they were, and temporarily slowing or pausing hiring. What I think for the flexible and remote job market is most of the companies that we talk to at FlexJobs, that we have on our site, whose jobs we post, they have been doing remote work for a long time. So moving into this as a full-time remote work strategy right now is not as disruptive for those types of companies as it might be for some other companies that are just getting into this. So for a lot of the companies on FlexJobs, if they are slowing or pausing hiring as they kind of get readjusted, I don't think it will take them as long to get up to speed. Again, this is all anecdotally. Right now, we are so in the brand new beginning of this change in the job market that it's really hard to tell, to be totally honest, what is going to happen. But what I will say from a job search perspective, and what we've been talking to clients about on the coaching team, is that really job seekers need to just continue the job search. And we're going to talk very specifically how you can be a really good job seeker at this time, the specific things that you need to be doing. Responses may be slower, but that doesn't mean you necessarily have to put your activities on pause. Oh yes, and a good question. Are we automatically muted? Yes. Thank goodness for automatic mute in the time of remote work. Yes, we are automatically muted, and you may see a child run in here at some point, just to let you know. I apologize in advance. Normally that would not be the case, but it may happen. I will handle that, and I will get right back to you. Hopefully, knock on wood, everything will be a-okay. So anyway, what I really want to come into this webinar today with is a spirit of, there are a whole bunch of things outside of our control right now in terms of our personal lives, our work lives, the plans that we have been making, the plans that I know a lot of people have decided this is going to be the year that they were going to find a new job or start working remotely, and they were just going to start up their job searches, and then all of this stuff happened. There's so much out of our control. So on this, we're going to focus on what we can control, the things that you can take hold of, that you can make the best of, that you can really put your best foot forward with. And when you do that in any situation, you will be better off than if you were not doing those steps. So here we go. All right, so let's talk about the remote job market. The long-term trends are remote work has been on the rise. One thing I will say, and this is not an apples to apples comparison, but FlexJobs came about at a very difficult time job market wise. We were founded in 2007. We immediately basically entered a massive recession, and remote jobs continued to increase throughout that. We did not see a drop off in remote job listings over that time. We continued to have an increase year over year, and it has been that way the entire time that we have looked at remote work. I can't say for sure that that's going to happen this time. This is such a new and different situation, but in terms of what we have to compare it to, that's just something to know. But remote work has definitely been on the rise. I know there was a question about some companies scaling back remote work and that sort of thing, and we'll get into that a little bit in the coming slides. But on the whole, there are far more companies adopting remote work and offering remote jobs than there used to be. And there are more companies doing that than are scaling back and taking away remote work. Not right now, I mean, entirely in the last 10 to 15 years. Right now, everyone's adopting remote work. It's the way to work. So It's also important to know that there are different kinds of remote work. So right now, 100% remote work is probably the thing that's happening most often. But until this week and last week, that was not the case. Occasional remote work is actually the #1 remote work option out there. So if you're looking for a remote job, you have to think about the level of remote work that you're looking for ultimately. You know, when we come out of this situation and we find whatever is normal on the other side, you have to think about what your ideal situation would look like. Most people do want to work from home 100% of the time, but most of the remote jobs out there are a hybrid of some in-office work and some at-home work. So it's just important to know what your ideal situation would be, and then what your best alternative would be. You know, what would you be okay with? What would you be willing to accept? And again, this is for the US job market, but we do see these similar numbers across the globe. In most countries, remote work has risen over the last 10 to 15 years. And globally, it seems to follow this same pattern. So hopefully that's helpful. I will say FlexJobs is a mostly US job site. We do have some international positions and also some work from anywhere positions that don't actually have any particular location required for them. But most of the jobs we have on our site are US based, just to set your expectations there. The advice that I'm going to give on how to find a remote job can be used anywhere basically that you're searching for a remote job, regardless if it's the US or anywhere else in the world. So here are the top career fields for remote jobs. This is something that we take a look at every year, and this is out of 55 career fields. So we try to focus on that top few to see where most of the jobs are going, but this is out of 55 fields. So there are a lot of other fields that offer remote work, but we tend to see the most popping up in medical and health, computer and IT, customer service, education and training, sales, and accounting and finance. And this is over the course of a full year. So we looked at the whole year for 2019, remote job listings, which job categories did they fall into. Others at the top include things like software development, account management, project management, business development, client services, consulting, and marketing. If you don't see a field that you are interested in or that you're actually working in on this list, it doesn't mean that remote work does not exist for that field. It just means it's not one of the top fields for remote work. So you might have to do some more research, and there might be fewer opportunities, but there will probably still be some opportunities. Oh, slideshow mode. Yeah, thank you, Karen. Let me put it in the slideshow mode. No, it's only not that way because I completely forgot. Thank you. Oh boy, I really am relying on you guys today. Okay, let's get back to, okay, the next slide. These are some of the top companies that usually hire for remote jobs. This is over, we looked at 2 years of job posting history to figure out for companies over the long term, which companies are hiring for the most remote jobs. And so these companies come out on the top for that. The reason that I want to share this is out of thousands. We have a database of over 50,000 companies that post remote and flexible jobs. This is just a very small percentage of those or number of those, just to show you the big names that are embracing this. And these companies tend to embrace this over the long term. So they have kind of a commitment to remote work. And so there's such a variety of companies that I wanted to highlight some of the different ones to really show you that variety and show you what's out there. There are also lots of small and mid-sized companies that offer remote work. So that's something to keep in mind also, that it's really a wide range. I think sometimes we think remote work is smaller companies, startups, tech only, but it really is a huge range of companies and industries and things like that. So let's talk about some of the most common remote job titles. Just gonna have those pop up there. So these are the top 20 titles that we see. At FlexJobs, we have a team of job researchers, and their job is exactly what it sounds like. Every day they go out and research for remote and flexible job listings. And these are the top job titles that they see all the time, out of many thousands of job listings. So again, it's just to get the ideas going of what the job market looks like, some of the biggest and most available jobs and companies and career fields for remote work. But if you don't see your particular job of interest on this list, or if you have multiple jobs of interest and some of them are here and some of them are not, there are certainly opportunities out there. They're just not in the very top, you know, the most common. But this is just to give you an idea of what's out there. I know sometimes, especially in times like this, people start thinking about career change. What else could they potentially do? What are their other options? And so this type of list might help you figure out, if you were really targeting remote jobs and you were a career changer, what would you be able to do? What would some of your other options be? So that is just things to consider to get some ideas going. Okay, so let's get into the actual process of searching for remote jobs, because that's kind of the big thing here today. The first thing is, where do you actually find remote job listings? So there's FlexJobs. I won't go hugely into that. I'm not a salesperson, that don't want to be. But if you are searching online anywhere, there are so many different websites out there. Most of the time you're coming across the huge job boards that have millions of job listings. Those are really difficult to navigate, especially when you're looking for remote work. They tend to not really pinpoint those jobs particularly well, so you spend a lot of time trying to find them. So when you're out and about on the World Wide Web looking for remote jobs, I would definitely recommend going to smaller sites, specialty sites that specialize in some area. It could be the type of career or job that you're looking for that they specialize in, the type of flexibility. So there are lots of sites out there that do specialize in remote jobs. The type of flexibility in terms of other types of flexibility that you're interested in, the location that you're in, or the lack of location that you would like for some people who just want to be untethered and be able to work from anywhere. So there's a couple different lists that I think are helpful to help you pinpoint the different listings, different sites that you might go to find job listings. Skillcrush.com has a list of the 25 plus best sites for finding remote work. FlexJobs is very happy to be on there. We also have a sister site called Remote Co. It's remote.co. And I'll send links to all of this stuff in that recap email, so you don't have to go scrambling to find it. But you can scramble if you would like. It's a really good list, pretty comprehensive of the types of remote options that are out there. And some of these sites for remote jobs are also targeted to specific career fields or industries or that sort of thing. RyeRob.com, which is founded by a guy named Ryan Robinson, hence the name RyeRob. He put out a list of the 72 best freelance job websites to get remote freelance work fast. Now, this is for freelance work specifically. The reason I wanted to point this out is twofold. One, a lot of these websites will have employee jobs also. They're not strictly freelance, they just happen to post freelance. But two, one of the things that we know happens in economic turmoil or downtimes, which seems to be what we're going into, is that freelance work tends to be on the rise if employee work is not. So if we see the employee type jobs reducing, we see freelance type jobs going up. So I think it's a good idea for everyone to be thinking about their options in terms of both employee jobs or freelance jobs, and just seeing what's out there, keeping those options open. Freelancing is not for everyone, of course, so I would definitely recommend that you do some research and just make sure that it could be a good fit for you. But this will be a good list to have if you're going to start looking for some freelance remote jobs, which might be a good thing to have in your back pocket right now. I would also recommend you go to your own industry and professional associations. They're a good example of what I was talking about before with the specialty websites. So websites that specialize in a certain area, a certain profession or industry. They're smaller, they tend to have job boards, which is very nice, but they also offer the connection to other people, which is a critical component in your job search, even for remote jobs, even in this time of social distancing, social isolation. Having people as a part of your job search can be tremendously helpful. So I would recommend joining up in different professional associations and taking advantage of whatever networking opportunities they have. I'm sure most of them will be remote right now, but that is totally fine. And you can also talk to, which I know we're doing a lot of this remotely now, friends, family, neighbors, your own professional network, and let them know what you're interested in. One of the things that I was surprised to find when I started working remotely about 10 years ago were how many other people in my neighborhood also worked remotely. And I had no idea until I started doing it myself. And then I would see them in the middle of the day and actually be able to have a conversation, people I wouldn't necessarily see otherwise. So I would recommend just talking to people. If you are talking about your job search, mention that you're looking for remote specifically. You might find a lot more people have connections to remote work now. So this might actually be a good time to talk to people about it. But thinking about expanding that professional network that you have to include casual acquaintances too, your family, your friends, people who you don't necessarily know professionally, but you know well enough to have a conversation with. So I think that's a good idea. Like I said, the people component of your job search is going to be really important. When you're searching online, and I think this is especially important right now because I've already seen new scams coming in as a result of this virus going around, people taking advantage of the situation, not necessarily job scams yet, though I'm sure we will see those crop up, but scams in general. I've gotten a lot more of those spam phone calls, emails from people with all sorts of solutions for me that are very clearly scams. What I would say is the remote job market is a hotspot for job scams anyway. So the keywords that you want to avoid when you're searching online and you're on a job search website and you're looking for different keywords, do not use the phrases work from home or work at home. Those are very commonly used by scammers. The majority of the jobs that you find when you do searches for those tend to be scams, or at the very best borderline kind of fishy jobs. So I would avoid those. Some companies will talk about their work from home program, or they will talk about when you're working from home at this job, da, 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 da. That's okay. But if you are finding job titles that say work from home this and work from home in your pajamas, and they, you know, it tends to be that language that the scammers are using. There are a lot of keywords that you can use in your search that are much safer. They're not used nearly as much as by scammers. Those are things like telecommute job. It's kind of an older term, but it's still used a lot. So that's something to keep in your search. Virtual job and remote job seems to be probably the most popular now. Distributed team is another one we've seen. Home-based, open nationwide, home-shored, location agnostic, and then telework is kind of another throwback term. So I would say those are ones to definitely go for and avoid work from home and work at home. If you had to pick just a couple to go with, I would say telecommute, virtual, and remote are probably the three most common right now, but you might see these other keywords when you're looking at job listings. Those are, it's good to know what those mean, because those actually mean you'll be able to work from home in those jobs. A little bit more on scams. It's one of the biggest things that FlexJobs does is just try to educate people on scams in the job market, because there are so many of them. And it's really unfortunate, because this is a great professional way to work if you find the right legitimate company with a legitimate job. But you know, if you come across a lot of these scams, it can really, it can prove really consequential financially as part of your career. There's lots of downsides to coming across a scam, of course. So some of the warning signs of scams. If you cannot find the company's name on the job listing, or there's a generic email address, that is a warning sign. I should say all of these are individual warning signs that basically alert you to do more research, to dig a little bit deeper, to figure out if this is real or if it's a scam. None of these by itself means you are definitely dealing with a scam. It's the more you see of these, the more warning signs come up, or the more you do some research after seeing one warning sign and you start to have, you know, feelings like, okay, this is not probably the right job for me. This doesn't look quite right. These are all warning signs that just say, hey, stop, do a little bit more research, keep yourself safe. This could be a scam. It's not definitely a scam. If the job description is very vague, or there's no job description at all, and it only talks about the benefits of the job, how much money you're going to make, how easy it is, all of those sorts of things, definitely a warning sign. Being offered job interviews over instant messenger or IM. In my time at FlexJobs, like I said, we have over 50,000 companies detailed on the site, and I have interacted with or learned about or researched thousands of them. I have only come across about 5 companies that do instant messenger interviews. The vast majority of companies will use this as a scam ploy to get your information, your personal information, bank accounts, social security numbers, etc. If you are invited to an instant messenger interview, some of the things to look at are, or to look at for further warning signs are, if you are immediately offered a job after about 1 second of talking to this person, if the person you're talking to uses really poor grammar, spelling, punctuation, that's another red flag. And that's a red flag throughout job descriptions and any interactions that you have with a company. So those are just a couple. And then if they start to ask you for any personal information, social security numbers, bank accounts, credit card numbers, if they ask you to do anything related to Wells Fargo wire transfers, or sorry, not Wells Fargo, Western Union wire transfers, or buying gift cards or anything like that, any sort of financial exchange or interaction. Those start to be red flags for those instant messenger interviews. Okay, so let's see. There's also, whenever you're offered a job immediately, that is a huge red flag. And when you are really urged to accept it quickly, that's another red flag. Remote job searching for legitimate professional level jobs follows a very similar pattern to a traditional job search. You typically apply online, or you get introduced through your own network. You send in your resume and cover letter. They usually do a phone screening interview. Then they would do a follow-up second interview. There is an interview process. Sometimes it's multiple interviews in a row. Sometimes it's phone, sometimes it's video, but it's usually one of those options. It's not usually instant messenger. But it is a rigorous process for the most part. You might be asked to do some tests or submit some samples, but it is a very real process. So when you are asked to accept a job immediately, or you're offered a job on the spot, that's almost always a huge red flag that it's a scam. One of the things you may come across, which happens with higher level types of positions, more professional level types of positions that are actually scams, is the scammers using a real company's image, their logo, their name, their website design. I mean, they really copy everything and create a scam website that just mimics a real company. So this has happened with GE, Google, CNBC, companies that you know fairly well. They're like household names. You immediately feel comfortable when you hear a name like that, and you think, oh yeah, I would love to have a job with that company. You have to be careful of the website that you're actually on. So this is just an example of the small difference that they usually have between the scam website and the real company's website. So the fake website might be something like gecareers.com, and then the real GE Careers page is ge.com/careers. And if you find yourself on a website that you're starting to feel like maybe isn't the right place, there's a really simple thing you can do. You can open up a new browser and search for that company's name and the keyword careers to see if you're on the right careers page, if the web addresses are the same. And then for just any company or job where you are feeling like something isn't quite right, you've noticed a red flag or a warning sign, or you just wanted to cover all your bases and you haven't noticed anything wrong yet, you can do a search for that company name, the job title, and the keyword scam. And a lot of times you, if you do think you're dealing with a scam, you will find evidence. You'll find local news alerts, news programs, especially local news programs, like to do stories about this to warn other people about it. So you'll find local news stories. You might find Better Business Bureau ratings, ratings on Glassdoor. The FBI sometimes puts out alerts about these types of scams. There are lots of different services out there or sources of information that would tell you if you're dealing with a scam. And sometimes it's people just posting online on regular social media, hey, heads up, there's a company named this and they're running a scam. I've been scammed by them. So it's important to do that, and that helps you cover your base really quickly. It only takes a few minutes to go through that stuff and say, okay, you know what, this is a little too fishy. I'm just going to move on to the next job listing and we're going to skip this one. And that's really the biggest thing, is that if you're starting to feel like something could be a scam, it's probably best to move on and to go to the next potential company, the next potential job, and continue your job elsewhere. It saves you a lot of time and frustration and energy in the long run. So really important to just keep yourself safe, move on to the next thing. Okay, so FlexJobs company guide. Oh yeah, so finding remote companies. There are lots of different places that you can look for real legitimate remote companies out there. FlexJobs company guide is a public part of our site. So if you go to flexjobs.com/company-guide, and again, these links will all be in the recap email. You can search by company name, by industry, and by location, I believe. And so you can see all of the companies that have posted on our sites. You can see their job posting histories, which is really nice, even if you're not a member. If you're a member, you'll also see their current job listings, but you won't see their job posting histories. And what's really nice about that is you can see the type of flexibility that they've offered, if it was remote, if it was partial or 100% remote, the types of jobs that they hired for that type of flexibility. And it gives you a really good sense into what that company would potentially be offering or hiring for in the future. We also put out a list every year called the 100 Top Companies for Remote Jobs. Our most recent one came out in January of 2020. And if you go to that website, flexjobs.com/blog/top100remote, you'll get that full list. It's the 100 companies that posted the most remote jobs in the previous year. So it's a really good list just to see the types of companies that are really leading the way in terms of remote work, and see if they have any listings right now. We also put out a listing very recently on the 25 fully remote companies that are hiring now. It's not an end-all be-all list. It's just 25 of the fully remote companies that we deal with that are hiring right now, just to give you an idea of the companies that are out there. And then you could also go directly to companies' career pages and start looking for clues that they offer flexible or remote work. You might see them actually say that out loud, but a lot of the time companies still like to hide that they have remote jobs. I think that they don't want people applying just because the job is remote. They want people who want to do the job, and if it happens to be remote, that's great. So if you go on their careers pages, you'll see things like, work-life balance and flexible work are sort of the generic catch-all terms. It doesn't really give you a lot of detail, but then you might see little videos that they've put together of employee experiences or employee support websites where they get a little bit more detailed in it. It's not really on their main page, but it might be on some of those other pages. So you can do a little sleuthing and see what's out there. And then also think of former customers, vendors, business partners, and similar types of companies related to your previous employers. And make a list of companies that you might like to work for. I worked with a client this week who did an excellent job of figuring out the size of the company he'd like to work for, the target industry that he was most interested in. And he came up with a list of about 25 companies that he was really going to target heavily in his job search. And I think that can be a really helpful way to go about your search. So, creating that list, the reason I say this one with former customers and vendors and things like that is really making a list of companies where you've had a positive experience can be really helpful, because you not only want to work for them because you think they're a good company, you've had a good service from them or some product that you use that you really enjoy, but you've also got something to talk about in that cover letter that you're writing them or in networking. You can talk to them about why that company, I sought your company out specifically because I had this experience that really stuck with me, and that's the kind of company that I want to work for. Employers like to see that. They like to see that they have been sought out, that you're not just applying for job after job after job, which may be the case. I mean, it's job searching. That's what we do. But they like to see that there is some special reason that you have decided to apply for their job. And then as far as finding remote jobs outside the US, so the previous things here, there are definitely remote job listings in the top 100 companies, in these 25 fully remote companies that you could do outside of the US. But there are also some specific things that you can do if you are looking for remote jobs outside of the US. On FlexJobs, there's the advanced search page where you can choose an international location. And one of the options under there is anywhere. So you can choose a job that can be done anywhere in the world. The key is here that 95% of remote jobs have some kind of location requirement. And I think that's one of the most surprising things that people find when they start working or start looking for work from home jobs, is that they're not open to everyone. You have to usually be based in a certain state or a certain country in order to qualify for a job. And each company is different, and sometimes the jobs on their teams will be different. Usually it's because of certain tax and employment laws that they have to go by, that they have these types of restrictions. So for example, some companies, basically when you hire employees, you have to set up in the United States in any state where you are going to have employees who reside in that state. And that's an expensive and timely process for some companies to go through. And so they will pick a certain number of states that they would set up to hire companies or hire employees from, and only set up in those particular states and only hire people from those states. So it is really important to pay attention to that. Whenever you're searching on any website for a remote job, you should definitely put in your location. That is critical. Put in your state, at least if you're in the United States, or put in your country. And that will help you find that remote jobs that are tailored specifically to you and that you actually are able to apply for those jobs. Okay. Yes. So, I know questions are coming in about the Q&A. I'm saving those for the end because I want to make sure that your question might get answered in the course of the presentation. So we're going to go through the whole presentation and then leave, I hope, about 15 or 20 minutes left at the end for Q&As. And also, if you have a question, please put it in the Q&A section of Zoom, because then I can see them all. I can see them ranked and thumbs up. I see that you guys are using that very well. Thank you. And so we can get to as many questions as we can, and the questions that the wider audience has. Okay. So let's talk about positioning yourself for remote jobs. Let's say you've done the company research, you have looked at job listings online, you're ready to start applying, you're ready to start reaching out to people at those companies, really putting your network into action. There are a few different things. First of all, with remote jobs, there are certain skills that employers are looking for across the board, regardless of your career field, the type of work you want to do. Those are listed here. I want to give a huge special shout out to written and verbal communication skills. These are critical. Almost every single company that we talk to that offers remote jobs, when we ask them, what sort of skills do you think are really necessary for people to be able to work remotely well? Communication is the first thing that they think of. It really is the foundation of remote teams, of remote companies. Without communication, you don't have the connection between the people that you need to make everything work. So written and verbal communication skills, are definitely critical, but also things like time and task management, the ability to focus yourself. Now more than ever, if you're working from home with kids or roommates or even just partners, that's really important. Asking proactive questions. And what I mean by proactive questions are, you need to be the type of person, or you need to develop the skills so that you're the type of person who, when you see something, I don't like using this phrase, but I'll do it anyway. When you see something, you say something. If you're not sure of something, if you're unsure, if you need more information, if you want to clarify something, if you want to bring up a new idea, you have to be the kind of person that proactively does that. You can't wait for your manager to say, and Bree, what ideas do you have today? You have to be able to be the one who raises your hand and says, hey, I have an idea about that, or I had a question about that. Being able to speak up for yourself, your ideas. This also goes to career progression and getting promotions and raises down the line. Being able to speak up and also say what you have been doing, the value that you've contributed, the contributions that you've made to the company. All of this is kind of part and parcel of the same thing. It is being a person who speaks up when they have questions or they have ideas or anything like that. Being comfortable with technology is another thing, and basic troubleshooting skills. So what I mean by that is, let's say you're working from home and your Wi-Fi goes out. Do you know the steps that you should take to investigate that, to troubleshoot it, and to fix it? Doesn't mean you have to be a programmer or you have to be able to do things with hard drives and chips in your laptop. Clearly, I have no idea what I'm talking about in that realm, because you don't need those skills just to work from home unless that's your job. But you do need basic comfort with technology and basic troubleshooting skills. And then a growth mindset. This is something we see most companies looking for nowadays. It's really the ability to embrace change, to always be looking to learn new things. Continuous learning is another thing that we see often, growth mindset and continuous learning. These are really things that companies are looking for with remote work. And it has to be an independent push for yourself to do this. You have to want to internally push yourself to be growth oriented, to be okay with change, to adapt to change, to look for ways to change, and then to look for ways to learn new things. The next thing is familiarity with digital communication skills. So we talked about how written and verbal communication is critical. There is also this digital communication that happens in a remote team, just like we're on Zoom today. So there are things that you can definitely do. When we surveyed about 140 remote companies over on remote.co. We surveyed 140 remote companies and asked them, what platforms do you use most often for these different types of communication? So these are just some ideas. This is not the full list of communication platforms that are out there. There are many more. But this would give you some idea of what to go and look at and research and get to know if you don't know it already. So for instant messenger or IM types of communication, Slack is by far the #1 thing. Google Chat, HipChat. For video conferencing, GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar, Skype, JoinMe, Google Hangouts, and Zoom were the main ones that people used. For file sharing, Google Drive, Dropbox, and OneDrive usually came out on top. And then for virtual office environments, which is an interesting thing that some remote teams do, not all, but some, Yammer and Sakoko were the ones that came out on top. What I would recommend is for any of these sections where you don't know at least one or two of these types of tools, they all have either free versions or free trials. And actually right now, a lot of them have free long-term trials because they're trying to support people who are working remotely for the first time or studying remotely. And so I would go out and try to learn some of these. You only have to be familiar enough so that you feel comfortable enough that on day one at your new job, you could get up to speed pretty quickly with these. You don't have to be super proficient in them and be able to know exactly how they work. But if you get a general idea from just using these, enlisting the help of family members or friends, especially right now, everybody's looking to communicate at a social distance. This would be a good thing to work with somebody else on so that you can actually have somebody to communicate with. I would also say, YouTube is a wealth of information. They have lots of videos, and some of these, if you go onto these sites for these products, they have their own training videos that you can watch, but just to get an idea of how these work. And then you can add these to your resume, which is the next thing that we're going to talk about. So resumes for remote jobs. There are two main things I want you to think about when you start to formulate your resume for remote work. The first thing is, the question you want to ask yourself is, do you have previous remote work experience? So right now, a lot of you may be getting remote work experience that you didn't have before, which is in this case, a good thing for your job search. So you can actually put that, and I'm sorry, I'll fix one of these here, but you can actually put that on the resume next to the job titles or next to the location. Add those keywords to the position on your resume. So in the job title, this should say remote marketing coordinator. It says freelance, sorry about that. So you could have remote in there. In the location, you could say Dallas, home office, or remote work. You can mention it in the summary that you hopefully have at the top of your resume, and we'll show those in a minute. In the key skills list or the key abilities list, you could have remote work, experienced remote worker. You do not have to be specific about how often you were working from home, how much time you spent doing it. It might be once a week. It might be a couple times a month. It really does not matter as long as you can talk about that experience in a job interview and be truthful about how you were productive and effective in working remotely. If it was the kind of remote work experience that you would use air quotes around because it was really more of some time off or some time away from the office, and you can't talk about it really well in a job interview, it's best not to put that on your resume. But if you do feel strongly that this is something you could talk about in a job interview and talk about how you know what it takes to work remotely because you've done it before, then put it on your resume for sure. For the skills and tools, there are actually technology skills sections that you can have on your resume. So you could put the technology programs that you know, and you can also put something like adapting new skills on a regular basis or adapting new programs on a regular basis, adopting, not adapting. And then you can talk about the skills that we talked about before. So on your resume, talk about communication skills, proactive communication, talk about time and task management, your ability to work independently. If the job description lists specific skills that that employer is looking for that are more of those transferable or soft skills, make sure those are on your resume. And we'll talk about that in the next the next section as well. Okay, so here are some examples, real life examples, resumes that have remote worked into them in some capacity. These are different ways to do it in that line where you've got your job title, the company's name, the dates that you worked. You can also have the remote position, remote position, remote work. I would also try to mimic the language that the company uses where you're applying. So if their job description says telecommuting, you might want to switch the stuff on your resume, do a quick keyword search for remote and switch those to telecommute. It seems like a tiny little thing, but if their applicant tracking system is looking for the keyword telecommute on your resume, boom, you've got it there. These are the summary and key skills sections that I mentioned at the top of your resume. This is something that we recommend pretty much everyone have now. There are some instances where this wouldn't work. For example, academic positions or scientific research positions. Not always, usually those types of resumes or CVs follow a different type of format, but for almost everybody else at any level, you can use this type of section on your resume. So I've underlined in blue the areas where people have entered their remote experience or the skills that they have used to be a good remote worker. And so this is how you can kind of get it into your different skills and summaries and get it on your resumes. These sections should also be edited for each job. You don't have to scratch the entire thing, but I would make sure at least your skills list is being changed based on the skills that are required in the job description itself. Okay, so these are those separate technology skills or technology capabilities sections that I mentioned before. You should list out the programs that you know. Remote communication tools is one way to list all of those different things that you might know. And then technology and computer skills, you can have this line here, effective when communicating remotely over phone, email, video chat, which reminds me, actually, we were talking about remote experience before. One of the things that is really important that you should consider as remote experience is if you've ever worked at a distance from other coworkers. So you may have been in an office, but if you did most of your communication with people and your projects with people and all that sort of stuff on phone, email, document sharing, that counts as remote experience. You should definitely be truthful and say where you were in an office, but that you were able to communicate and collaborate with people from a distance is really important. People across time zones in different offices in the same city, it doesn't matter as long as you get, the gist of you were able to communicate and collaborate at a distance from those people. So just some more examples here of how you might do this. And yes, this will be recorded and sent out, so you can definitely refer back to these for the specific language, the formatting, all of that kind of stuff. Okay, so I've done a lot of talking. I'm going to take a quick 1-second break here to take a sip. But these are some of the next steps that you should follow. First of all, think about the type of flexibility you want in terms of the level of remote work. So a lot of times it's going to be 100% remote work. That's what most people want. But if you were willing to accept occasional remote work, you should keep that in mind because it opens up the number of job listings that might be available to you as a result of that. And then research your career field for what's currently being offered. And especially now, I think it's really important to pay attention, look at job listings as they come in, look at the dates that they were posted, and just pay attention to what it looks like and feels like in those different fields that you're interested in. Because I think it's going to change on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. We just don't know exactly what's coming. So being on top of that, if you can, even just a little bit each day to pay attention to that is a smart thing. Start updating your resume for sure, and then you have to start applying, of course. I like to put that in because I know for a lot of us, we get stuck in preparation mode. We want to make sure that resume is perfect. We want to make sure we've got our cover letters perfect before we start applying. And I'm here to tell you, you got to shove yourself out of preparation mode and start applying. You can check out FlexJobs for job listings, company info, and more flexible job search support. And like I said, a lot of what we have is public. So I want to make that super clear that a lot of what you will find on the site, the blog, the company database, even all of the job listings, you can actually see them even if you're not a member. You just won't see the details of every single job, the company's name, and I think the full job description, but you'll at least get a sense of the jobs that are being posted. And so you can it goes back to that research area where you can look at the types of jobs that are available to you, how remote are they, how often are they being posted, and get a good sense of that too. So please, if for nothing else, use those free resources. Okay, so we're going to dive into questions here. So I'm going to go from the top because we have a lot of thumbs up questions here. Following up. Yes, this person says, I'm having a hard time following up on virtual positions I've applied for. For instance, I don't have an actual name or email address of the hiring manager. Excuse me. Okay. Yes, so we always talk about, career coaches, I should say, always talk about how follow-up is really important in your job search. And when you don't have the name of a hiring manager or an HR person, it's time to do a little bit of research. You're not always going to be able to find somebody. So first of all, let yourself off the hook. If you're not able to find someone for every single job, it's oftentimes not possible. I will send out a couple services that we recommend to find email addresses at companies for different things. So you can put in what you think the director's job title might be, or HR director or something like that, and find different people at companies and their email addresses. LinkedIn is always a good place to do some research and just see, can you pinpoint people who are in that department who hold higher level positions and who might be hiring for that particular role? Or if nothing else, can you pinpoint people who are in HR, either recruiters or HR folks who are as part of the hiring process, and see if you can find someone to contact. And you can start your message with them on LinkedIn, or if you can find their email address, basically just saying, I know that you may not be the right person to contact. And so I apologize if you're not the right person to send this to, but I applied for this job and I'm so excited for it. I wanted to make sure to reach out to someone at the company. You can go into the general follow-up email that you would send and then say, if you're not the right person, would you mind forwarding this to whoever is? And you'll find that some people are very helpful and some people won't even respond to you. It's all over the place, but I think it is worth it to see if you can do that. And also before you apply, to see if you can find somebody too, that can be really helpful. Okay. Next question here. Do you have any tips for making yourself stand out during the interview process? Great question, because it's not something we covered. I just finished a second interview for a remote position. I was thinking of sending a video thank you message rather than the standard thank you. Was wondering if you had any other tips. I think a video message could be really nice. I think with video, you want to pay attention to the general feel that you get from the company and if they would welcome that. Sometimes even companies that have a lot of remote work are still very traditional and a little buttoned up. And sometimes they're a lot more I don't know, modern's not the right word, but they're more open to something like this. So I would go with your gut on that and how you feel the company might respond to a video thank you message. I think that's great. I would definitely send the standard thank you email also. And you could say, hey, I've just included this little video message to let you know how excited I am about the position. And it could be a super quick email, but keep it that kind of standard one and include the video. But those are really the main ways of following up after you've interviewed. You might also, if there's anything that's come up, and this is for anybody really, if there's anything that's come up in the interview where you think, I think I have a pretty good solution for that. If you've talked to the company about some of the issues that they're having or some of the problems that position would need to solve, you might even say, I've already started thinking about some of the things that I could potentially help with or that I would be particularly useful with. And just let them know that you've already started that thought process in your head and you're really getting into it because you're very excited about the position. I wouldn't necessarily send them a whole proposal on how they can fix a certain thing since you don't have all the details of it, but just let them know that that's your thought process, that you're really diving into those discussions that you've had and the problems that they're facing. And you're really excited to be able to help solve some of them. All right, next question. Let's see, larger employers. Okay, so I saw this one earlier. I'm hoping the panel can address, and hello, I'm the whole panel. A trend I've noticed in larger employers, Anthem, UHG, Cigna, Prudential, pulling back on their work from home remote jobs in the last year. I'm wondering if this is also a trend FlexJobs has noticed, if there's any expectation these larger employers will change their mind after current events. I don't know if they will change their mind. I'm sure at the moment they have changed their mind. But I'm not sure if they will forever. But what I will say is we do see this where some big well-known companies pull their remote workers back in or cancel remote work programs. And what we've seen over the course of this happening, and this has been happening way back since Best Buy and Yahoo kind of blew up remote work. I think it was back in 2013. And we saw all sorts of headlines that this was the end of telecommuting as we know it. And what's happened is far from that. For all of these bigger names that get a lot of press that are pulling back their remote companies, we see dozens of companies either starting to hire remote workers for the first time or expanding their already existing remote programs. Most of the remote work that goes on out there is smaller and mid-sized companies, and they're the ones who are really taking this on and growing it. So I would definitely take those things with a grain of salt. Usually when you look at those companies, there is something else going on also. There's either a change in management, there are some budgetary or economic issues where they're not hitting their marks essentially. So there's something else going on. It's not usually that remote work is the problem. They might use that as a band-aid to fix whatever else they're trying to fix at the company. So I would say take those with a grain of salt. What we see the long-term trend for remote work over the last 10 to 15 years is that it is increasing every year and more companies are taking it on. So hopefully that helps. And I hope, knock on wood and all that, I hope that continues to be the case despite what we are experiencing now, or maybe because of what we're experiencing now, this is a second chance for companies to take it on. We shall see. How do you ask for work at home telecommute as a reasonable ADA accommodation when a job is listed as office-based but could be performed at home? This is a great question. Should this be done during the second interview or after the offer is made? Ooh, there is no right answer to this, I will say. I think it really depends on the situation with that particular company and how you are feeling about their receptiveness to it. I will say most companies, if they're advertising an office position, they are very, what's the word I'm looking for? This is where I start to lose all my wording. They're not usually open to making it a remote position. I will, one good website, and I'll send this links. We actually have some articles on this too, but a link I'll send. Glassdoor.com does good employee surveys. So companies, they'll have employees who actually currently work there do anonymous surveys about the company, the resources they provide, the support they provide, and you might be able to find out, depending on the company, if somebody has posted previously what this company typically does in terms of ADA and accommodation. You know, if they're good at it, if they're terrible at it, because companies are all over the place with this. So I would say also, yeah, I would say it's okay to answer that or ask that in the second interview. If you do feel like this is, you've really put yourself out there in a strong way. The thing is with office jobs, usually you're going to be doing some in-person interviewing. So depending on the disability that we're talking about, this may come up earlier. Some people whose disabilities are not physical or not visually noticeable, wait until later to disclose this. Some people who it is a physical disability, they will disclose it earlier on in the process simply because they have to. Not by law, but have to because it's becomes a conversation point. So I would say the second interview, I wouldn't do it before the second interview. I would try to wait till you are pretty darn sure that you are one of the final people. And I would also look into research on Glassdoor and other sites to see if anybody at that company or who used to work for that company has talked about how it handles ADA and accommodation, and whether it is a supportive company in that area or not so much. And like I said, I'll send you a link to a couple different articles we have also surrounding that. Good question. And a lot of people had that one also. Let's see. And yes, actually somebody said it, usually if the position can be done remotely, it's usually advertised as such. The company gets a better applicant pool. Yes, that's one of the biggest benefits of remote work. I hired a resume and cover letter LinkedIn consultant recently who has been in this business for over 25 years. He mentioned that 2 out of 3 jobs posted on LinkedIn, Glassdoor, Indeed, etc., are already taken by another employee or they have someone in mind. How does this compare to FlexJobs postings? This, I think, goes back to and I've been a career advisor for about 15 years, and there is this quote that has been used ever since I set foot in career advising from my very first day, that 70% of jobs are filled through networking, that the job listings that you find online are usually filled by employees. They're not really available, that there's some thing going on where the job listings online are basically bunk. I will say that there are certainly situations where that does happen, where somebody at the company has already filled the position, or not already filled it, but they think they're going to fill it, but they want to put it out there anyway to start generating applicants just in case. The surveys that we find more so have that at much less, that it's not 70% of jobs are filled through networking. It's through a combination of online job applications and networking. So it's when job seekers go out, they find a job online that they want to apply for, and then they also try to find somebody in their network or connect to someone new who can help shepherd them through that job application process. So it seems to be much more that networking does play a big role, but it's in combination with the job listings that are online that you're applying for. At FlexJobs, I will say, I don't think, if this is the case on LinkedIn and Glassdoor, which I don't know that it is, I don't think we have that at FlexJobs. The job listings, we actually go through and have someone clean them out. I think it's every week or 2 weeks. Somebody actually clicks through all of them and gets rid of the ones that are filled. I don't envy that person, but I'm glad that they are there and doing that work. But no, I would say I don't think that this is as big an issue as it's made out to be. I think it's just one of those things that has been around for career advisors to say for a very long time. But online applications, I think, are still a big piece of this process. So I wouldn't just rule it out because it's listed online. Yeah, that's what I'll say about that. All right, we'll do one more question here. I know we're coming up to the top of the hour. Are there any free resources for passing online personality tests? Several remote jobs, but always get knocked out on the personality test page. Interesting. Paid resources. No, I haven't actually heard of any of these resources for passing online tests. That is an interesting question. Honestly, I don't know the answer to that. So let's go. Okay, so Bree, do you have a top 3 to 5 suggestions for success in an online interview? Yes, let me go over that really quickly. So most of your job interviews right now, I would say maybe all of them are going to be done on video, even if they were done in person before, and especially with remote jobs, either phone or video. Most remote companies actually will do phone interviews, but some will incorporate video. And I have a feeling that the companies who are coming into remote work now might actually want to be on video more because they're really used to that face-to-face conversation. So I would say prepare ahead of time. First of all, the technology that we talked about before, Zoom, GoToWebinar, GoToMeeting, try out those free resources and then actually practice interviewing on video that way with yourself. You can usually record on those platforms, or you can even just do a recording on your phone, you know, holding it up and talking to it, and just see how you sound. Check out your background, make sure that it's not super distracting, that there aren't, you know, boxes and junk behind you. Also make sure that you're not backlit. You want a light in front of you. And so that's really important. Also, if you're backlit, it kind of makes you look like you're in one of those anonymous TV interviews where the person is sort of a profile and you can't really see their face. Check your technology ahead of time. Test out the microphone that you're going to be using. I find a headset always is more clear than just using the microphone that is built into your laptop. This is just one of the headsets that comes when you get an iPhone. So you can use that instead. And so those are probably my biggest tips. Practice, practice, practice. I will actually send, LinkedIn has an interesting tool. You have to be logged into your LinkedIn account to use it, but it's a mock interview tool and they will prompt you with questions. It's like an AI sort of thing. They'll prompt you with questions. It'll record you answering, and then it'll play back the recording with you and offer tips for those questions. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but it is really interesting and it does help you. The more comfortable you can get before the actual day of the interview in terms of your technology, your setting, all of that sort of stuff, the better off you'll be. And then of course, prepare the way you would for a regular interview, prepare answering questions, prepare stories to talk about, to give examples of times when you dealt with the questions that they're asking about, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so that does it. I know we've come to the top of the hour. I want to be very respectful of time, which is something that not a lot of us have these days. So thank you all very much. I know there are so many questions that I was not able to get to. I apologize. With a group this size, even if I was a panel of 5, we would never get to that many questions, but hopefully you are walking away with something that will help you in your job search. Like I said, just keep at it, keep plugging away, take it day by day, pay attention to the information that you're seeing, because who knows what this will be like in 2 weeks. We are going to be doing some regular webinars, so I'll send out the links to those also. And if you're a FlexJobs member, every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, we do a live Q&A with career coaches. So I'll send the link for that too for anybody who's a FlexJobs member. It's just like this, and it'll be a live career coach, and it's answering questions the whole time for 30 minutes. So hopefully that's helpful. You're all very welcome. Thank you for the kind words. That makes me feel very good in this crazy time. And I wish you all the best of luck. Stay well, stay healthy, take care of yourselves, and good luck with that job search. You've got this. Thank you, everybody.